Hey guys, tonight we dive into the sad, strange, and sometimes dangerous life of a man whose job was to make others laugh, the medieval court jester. The floppy hat, the bells, the jokes. It all sounds like fun until you realize one wrong joke could land you in the dungeon. So, before we get started, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights and maybe turn on a fan for some background noise. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, you want to be a court jester? Too bad. No one actually wants that role. It's not something you train for. It just happens to you, like the plague, or being left-handed in a world of swords. Most jesters didn't dream of juggling turnips for moody aristocrats. They were usually chosen not for their ambition, but because of something unique about them. You might have had a limp, a hunchback, or a high-pitched voice. Maybe you were particularly clever, odd, or small. In any case, someone important pointed you out and said, "That one is funny. Let's keep him." Congratulations, you've been picked. Sometimes it all started with a single joke. You made a noble laugh at a feast, probably by accident. Maybe you slipped in the mud or mocked a rival baron just loud enough to be heard. The next morning, you're not back in your peasant hut. You're in the castle receiving a hat with bells and a new job title, be entertaining forever. Other times you were bought, yes, purchased. Lords sometimes collected jesters like exotic animals or oversized goblets. If you were especially witty or looked unusual, you might be gifted from one court to another like a party favor wrapped in sarcasm. You didn't apply to be a jester. You were chosen the way a chicken is selected for the stew pot, suddenly and without discussion. From that moment, your life was no longer yours. You became the designated laugh provider, brought out during feasts, summoned to tense political meetings, and paraded like a mascot when foreign diplomats visited. You couldn't say no or walk away. Not unless you wanted to go back to the farm. Or worse, get mistaken for a vagrant and end up in stocks. In the medieval world, a man without a job, land, or purpose was just asking to be arrested for simply existing. So, yes, on paper you're an entertainer, but in reality, you're a high-pressure, low-pay, full-time joke machine kept by people who could have you punished for bad timing, and that's how the audition worked. You may not be on stage, but in the medieval court, you're always performing. Being a jester isn't a job you clock into. It's your existence. You eat, sleep, and breathe among nobles but are never really one of them. You're their entertainment, their curiosity, their living what-if scenario. You're the court's emotional support oddity. You can't be invisible. Everyone sees you and expects something the moment they do a joke, a twirl, or a clever insult at someone else's expense. In essence, you're the world's most exhausted novelty act, always one smirk away from being called boring. Even when you aren't officially on duty, you're still being watched. Walking through the Great Hall, better strut. Passing the Queen's table at supper, better wink or curtsy ironically. If you sit alone for 5 seconds, someone will ask, why isn't the fool being foolish? And heaven forbid you show a real human emotion. Sadness makes people uncomfortable. Anger is dangerous. Quiet reflection is suspicious. If you're not grinning like an idiot while dancing on one foot, they'll assume you're plotting treason. Worse yet, you live in the palace, but not like a prince. You sleep near the kitchens or stuffed into a spare closet that used to hold brooms. Your quarters are close enough to hear all the laughter but never to be part of it. You eat leftovers and wear hand-me-downs. You exist as a source of fun, not as a person. And if someone important feels bored or irritable, guess who gets called to fix it? You. If a nobleman's hunting party fails, if the wine runs out, if the king's favorite dog coughs, someone will knock on your door at midnight and tell you to do something funny. You are not allowed to just be. You are only allowed to entertain. This means the line between your true self and your performer persona blurs so much that you can forget who you were before the bells and jokes. In the medieval court, you don't just wear the costume. You are the costume. And trust me, the show never ends. Being a jester sounds fun until you realize you have to be funny all the time. There's no off switch, no quiet days, no moods allowed. Your identity is expected to be an endless laugh track, no matter what else is happening in the world or your own life. Your job description? Be hilarious on demand. Even if the Duke just buried his third wife, even if the kingdom is At war, even if you woke up with a toothache and feeling down, it doesn't matter. You're still expected to juggle, tell a pun, or fall flat on your face gracefully. No pressure, right? And don't even think about reusing jokes. These are nobles, after all. They want fresh entertainment. That witty poem you spent a week crafting? Great. Now, create 12 more before lunch. While you're at it, impersonate 3 courtiers. Write a parody of the bishop's sermon and pretend to trip on a goose. If you bomb, you won't just get a bad Yelp review. You're getting jeered, slapped, possibly pelted with chicken bones, or worse, replaced. Medieval courts didn't have HR departments. Fail to amuse the wrong person on the wrong day, and your next gig might involve cleaning chamber pots or digging your own grave. You are the only one in the room not allowed to be serious. Everyone else can cry, rage, pray, scheme, or fall apart. You juggle through the tension. You laugh through royal tantrums. You navigate political intrigue with a silly hat and a forced smile. You can't say, "I'm not feeling it today." Feelings don't matter. Your value depends on how many laughs you can get from people who think sarcasm is foreplay and cruelty is humor. Yes, being the funny one sounds great in theory, but when your survival rests on entertaining people who could execute you for a bad punchline, it's less stand-up comedy and more medieval hostage situation. In a medieval court, the line between funny and offensive is thin. You're expected to walk that line blindfolded while juggling insults. As a jester, your job is to mock, tease, and comment on everything kings, queens, clergy, guests, but never to harshly or directly, and never at the wrong moment. One misplaced joke about the king's waistline or the lord's 4th marriage, and suddenly you aren't the witty one. You're the fool who crossed a line, and that line moves. On Monday, the queen laughs at your joke about her cousins gambling. On Tuesday, he's in the room, and now it's treason. On Wednesday, she laughs again, but too hard, and the king looks displeased. On Thursday, guards escort you out for disturbing court decorum. There's no safe zone. Jokes about politics or risky religion, physical appearances, or royal failures are very dangerous, unless you wrap them in metaphors and a juggling act. Even then, maybe don't. Some jesters developed an art of truth through absurdity, rapping, social criticism in riddles, double meanings, and animal metaphors. You might say something like, "The rooster with a sharp tongue and no eggs might want to crow less in the morning," hoping the king laughs instead of ordering your execution. But it's always a gamble. If the noble you mock is in a bad mood, that's your neck. If the bishop thinks your joke implies greed, that's blasphemy. If the court turns against you, those same people who once laughed will suddenly pretend they never found you amusing. And don't expect anyone to defend you. The jester isn't protected. You're not clergy. You're not nobility. You're a fool with a license to speak. A license that can be revoked with a single glare. Some jesters were whipped, some banished, some hanged, others retired, which often meant buried without a funeral. Yes, humor was your weapon, but it was also your noose. In court, timing is everything. Miss the beat, lose your head. Before you even speak, the room is already laughing at what you're wearing. As a medieval jester, your clothes aren't meant for dignity. They're made to humiliate. The moment you step into court, your outfit screams one thing: "I'm not a person, I'm a punchline." Let's start with the hat. The famous coxcomb is a multicolored, flopping horn monstrosity with bells attached. Bells are not for your performance. They're so people can hear you coming, like a walking wind chime of low self-worth. Your tunic is a checkerboard of clashing colors, something no sane tailor would intentionally create. Yellow and blue, red and green, bright patches sewn together like a tapestry made by someone who despises your dignity. Your shoes, curled toe, slippers with bells, are perfect for slipping on spilled meat or tripping over your own relevance. They make you look like an approved goblin, which is the point. Even your belt is a joke, oversized or knotted in ways that make practicality impossible. Need to carry a knife or pouch? Forget it. That's not your purpose. You're meant to jiggle, dance, and fall flat in a glorified mascot uniform. While nobles wear velvet, silk, fur, and gold thread, your clothes come from the cheapest scraps of wool and linen. If it's itchy or stained, even better. The worse it feels, the better it looks. The audience must always remember you're beneath them. Now imagine wearing this to every feast, every wedding, every royal negotiation. There's no variation, no wardrobe change. You are visually ridiculous all the time. Even when you're serious, you look like a coloring book explosion. Don't expect compliments. People won't say, nice hat. They'll say, try not to. Trip over your bells today, fool. Or worse, they'll tug your sleeve just to hear you jingle like a decoration with the shoes. Yes, your clothes might be iconic, but they're also a uniform of humiliation, reminding everyone that even when your words are sharp, your outfit is dull-witted enough to reassure the powerful that you pose no threat, just an echo in a funny hat. You sleep under the same roof as dukes, barons, and kings. But make no mistake, you're not one of them. You're part of the furniture, like a noisy tapestry. Your room, if you're lucky enough to have one, is a glorified storage closet tucked behind the kitchen or near the servants' quarters. It's just far enough to remind you that you're unimportant and just close enough to be dragged out for a midnight joke or awkward wedding toast. At meals, you don't sit with the nobles. You stand near them, close enough to overhear gossip, feel insults mid-bite, or have a piece of chicken thrown at your head. You might get to eat from the same platters, but always last after the nobles, the priests, the dog, and sometimes the stable boy. Yet you hear everything: affairs, plots, murmured insults, the truth behind marriages and treaties. You are the unwanted ear in the room, the one nobody stops talking around because in their minds, you're too lowly to matter. You're harmless, a fool, but that doesn't stop you from knowing everything. And sometimes that knowledge keeps you alive or gets you killed. The irony is cruel. You live among nobility. You know their secrets. You share their meals. But socially, you're isolated. The nobles won't befriend you. The servants won't trust you. You're too high for one world, too low for the other. Your presence is tolerated, but not respected. You can enter spaces peasants never see, but only as long as you're entertaining. You're patted on the head like a performing animal, not welcomed like a guest. If you speak too plainly or ask for something genuine, a favor, protection, respect, you're reminded immediately. Know your place, fool. You're a literal outsider. You can mimic the court, mock the lords, entertain the ladies, but you'll never inherit land, marry into nobility, or carry a sword for honor. Your future is as fixed as your bells. You live with nobles, but it's like how a shadow lives among light, always present, never truly visible. You've spent years honing your skills, juggling knives, reciting witty verse, playing instruments, mimicking voices, composing satire that could rival Cicero. Yet, no one thinks of you as talented. They see you as amusing. That's the curse of being a jester. No matter your skill or creativity, your genius is treated like a party trick. You compose clever rhymes in multiple languages. They chuckle and say, do the funny face again. You craft sharp political satire disguised as a joke about sheep. Someone throws a grape at your head and tells you not to get too clever. You are expected to be brilliant, but never acknowledged as such. If a noble sings a song, everyone applauds. If you sing better, the room goes silent. If a baron tells a joke, it's praised for being bold. If you tell the same joke better, it's called sassy or inappropriate. And woe to you if you outshine someone important. Nobles dislike being upstaged, especially by someone in a festive outfit. You're supposed to sparkle, not eclipse. So, you play a strange game. Perform just well enough to keep your job, but not so well that you make anyone feel inferior. Be witty but not wise. Be sharp but not threatening. Be brilliant, then immediately juggle something to remind people that you're not that clever. It's a balancing act on the edge of a sword. Here's the real tragedy. Many jesters were incredibly skilled musicians, acrobats, poets, political thinkers hiding behind a mask of foolishness because brilliance in a fool's mouth is only tolerated with a pratfall and a jingle. What's worse, they laugh hardest when you mess up, miss a joke, trip mid-dance, drop a lute, and that's when they roar, not because you intended to, but because failure reinforces what they want to believe. You're just an idiot in a loud outfit, not clever enough to mock them in their own tongue. Yes, your talent may be the most refined in the room, but your applause always comes wrapped in condescension. Feasts in a medieval court are grand, glistening roasts, overflowing wine goblets, minstrels playing in the background. It's a celebration of excess. And you're the main cause of humiliation. From the moment guests arrive, nobles eye you like a toy they can poke for laughs. Do a trick, fool. Tell a joke. Imitate Lord Wensley and his lazy eye. You perform not because you want to, but because the mood of 100 drunken nobles depends on your ability to remain unoffended. While being publicly mocked, grabbed, teased, or possibly slapped, you don't sit at the table. You orbit it like a jingly satellite of shame. You move from group to group like a courtly vacuum, filling awkward silences with a clever line or a badly timed handstand. You are always available but never invited. And when the wine starts flowing, that's when things change. Your performance becomes a game for everyone else. Someone pulls your hat down over your eyes. Another demands a pig impression. Someone else throws a leg bone at you and laughs when you flinch. Here's the thing. You're not just entertainment. You're a social punching bag, a safety valve for the elite. Nobles can't insult each other, but they can insult you. And they do. They mock your clothes, your voice, your background, your worth. Not because they hate you, but because you're convenient. Laughing at the jester makes everyone feel smarter, richer, and safer. You're the joke that keeps the system balanced. You smile, take it, and keep the laughter going. Because the alternative is silence. And in the medieval court, silence is dangerous. Silence. Entertain me, fool. I'm in a bad mood, and your life hangs in the balance. They're serious. You're one awkward moment away from being sent to clean stables or worse, executed for not being funny. Even when it's not your fault, it becomes your problem. You have to lighten the mood, ease the tension, and make the royal child laugh so no one notices the king just smashed a goblet over the steward's head. You act like a human emotional thermostat, adjusting yourself so everyone else stays warm and happy. But here's the kicker. No one thanks you. If the king is in a better mood, it's because he had strong wine. If he laughs, it's because someone else told him a joke. If he doesn't laugh, it's your fault. Either way, you lose. In a court filled with paranoia and politics, you, the jester, are both unimportant and responsible for the mood of the most powerful man in the kingdom. And if he doesn't laugh, you'd better start praying. You may live in the castle, wear bells on your hat, and tell jokes to kings, but don't be fooled. You're not free. You're more trapped than most. Being a medieval court jester isn't just a job. It's an identity that takes over your life. Once you're labeled the fool, that's it. There's no promotion or career change. You can't simply say you want to try something else. You're a performer for life, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter if you're getting old, tired, or sick. You don't get to retire. There's no pension or cozy cottage waiting for you at the edge of the kingdom. You can't become a merchant, a monk, or a respected elder. You're not a master of whatever your name was. You're still the fool, just slower, sadder, and with fewer teeth. The worst part is that even if you're brilliant, no one looks. Pass the hat. You might write poetry. You might speak 4 languages. You might even know more about state affairs than the royal council. But when you speak, everyone hears bells and expects pratfalls. You could warn of war and be ignored, but if you trip on a turnip, they'll laugh for hours. You've become a costume that can talk. And if you try to leave, good luck. You didn't learn a trade. You own no land. You have no contacts outside the castle walls. If you wander into a town, you won't be seen as that quick-witted performer. You'll just be a strange, poorly dressed man mumbling about dukes and drama, likely mistaken for a madman or vagrant. And if you do manage to leave and somehow survive, what then? You'll miss meals. You'll be forgotten. Sooner or later, some lesser noble will say, "Bring back the old fool. He made us laugh." Just like that, you'll be dragged back in. Because you're not a person. You're an object people remember only when they're bored. So you stay. You perform. You laugh at your own misery because the alternative is terrifying. Once you're the fool, you remain the fool forever. Here's the odd thing about being a fool. In a room full of nobles, bishops, and knights, you might be the only one allowed to speak the truth. Everyone else speaks in riddles. Diplomats flatter, courtiers plot, servants lie to survive. But you have one strange, dangerous privilege. You can say what others can't. You can mock a policy the king refuses to change. You can tell jokes that call out corruption. You can impersonate the baron, who is clearly stealing grain, or the duchess with her suspiciously close friendship to the bishop's nephew, and somehow get away with it. But let's be clear, getting away with it doesn't mean you're safe. It means you're on a tightrope balance between comedy and death. The court laughs because they pretend it's just a joke. But you know the truth. It's never just a joke. That joke about the war is a political opinion in disguise. That pun about taxes is public dissent wrapped in wordplay. You are the only honest voice in the room, and everyone knows it. That scares them. Some will admire you quietly, others will hate you openly, but all will watch your every word because one wrong move, one joke that cuts too deep, one truth too close, and the same crown that once laughed at your cleverness may have your head on the floor by morning. In a world where saying the wrong thing could land anyone in prison, the jester was the court's built-in truth serum, but with no safety net. You are the moral mirror, the court's conscience in bells. You're allowed to point at the naked emperor as long as you do it with a backflip and a silly voice. But if your truth cuts too deep, or if the king is in a particularly bad mood, jesters have been silenced before. So yes, in a court built on secrets, your job is to shine a flickering light into the shadows and pretend it's a big show. Sometimes the only one brave enough to speak the truth is the man everyone refuses to take seriously. You spend your life surrounded by people, nobles, knights, ladies, guests. You entertain at feasts, weddings, coronations, and even funerals. Your voice echoes in great halls. Your jokes fill chambers with laughter. Yet when your time comes, no one is there. The jester's life is loud, but his death is often quiet. You die in a corner room unnoticed, unmourned. No parade, no eulogy, no marble slab with your cleverest line. You don't get remembered like a knight or a bard. You're not written into songs or family histories. You just disappear. Maybe the cook mentions you years later. Remember that fool who danced like a goat. Maybe a new jester finds your old bells in a drawer and doesn't bother to ask whose they were. Or maybe no one remembers you at all, because someone else took your place before your bed even went cold. You weren't a person to them, not really. You were just a sound, a color, a flicker of amusement, replaceable and disposable. The very thing that made you valuable, your ability to disappear behind a joke, is also what ensures you're forgotten. You never marry, you never have heirs, and you never own land or build a name. You make everyone else feel important, but you leave no legacy of your own. Even your closest friend in court, the steward who once laughed at your imitation of the bishop, won't visit your grave. You might be buried outside the churchyard because fools weren't considered holy enough for consecrated ground. Too many jokes, not enough prayers. You lived for their laughter. You measured your worth in their joy. But laughter is fleeting. It echoes once and fades. When you're gone, the halls grow quiet until the next fool arrives, juggling for applause. So yes, your life brought others cheer. You made kings forget their worries and lords drop their pride. But when your candle finally burns out, there's no crowd, no fanfare, just silence. And maybe, just maybe, the soft jingle of bells remembered by no one. To the lords and ladies of the medieval court, the jester was entertainment, comic relief in a tense world of politics, war, and ceremony. But look closer. The jester wasn't just there to amuse. He was there to remind. He was a walking contradiction. Low-born, yet allowed to mock kings. Powerless, yet speaking truth to power. Ridiculed, yet feared. He stood at the center of the feast, jingling and spinning, not to be celebrated but to be studied, because the jester was a mirror. His jokes revealed things no one else dared to say. His puns disguised political commentary. His mimicry revealed hypocrisy. And every time he made the room laugh, he also made it squirm. Because somewhere in the slapstick, there was always a sliver of truth. The fool was safe to laugh at until he wasn't. Until he pointed out too much. Until the room realized this man in bells and rags understands us better than we'd like. And so he became more than a performer. He became a symbol. A reminder that power is fragile. That truth, even dressed in comedy, can be dangerous. That laughter is a weapon, one that can cut deeper than any sword. In a world obsessed with order and hierarchy, the jester was the exception, and that's what made him so necessary. He walked the halls of power not because he was respected, but because he reminded the powerful of what they feared most: being ridiculous, being exposed, being human. But the joke in the end was never truly on the nobles. It was on him. He sacrificed dignity, freedom, legacy, and peace of mind for the fleeting approval of people who would never see him as an equal. His genius was hidden beneath absurdity, his wisdom wrapped in wordplay, his truth dismissed as foolishness. Yet, centuries later, we still remember him, not as a clown, but as something more complex, more haunting, more real. The medieval jester was not a joke. He was a warning that sometimes the only one telling the truth is the one you're busy laughing at. Long before curtains rose and actors bowed, ancient theater was born in a swirl of wine, masks, and divine chaos. It didn't start with playwrights or applause. It began with Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, fertility, ritual madness, and performance. In 6th century BC, Athens, theater wasn't just culture, it was cult. The earliest dramas emerged during the city Dionysia, a spring festival honoring the god himself. Citizens flooded the city in celebration. Livestock was sacrificed. Wine flowed like rivers. And in the midst of this revelry, something miraculous happened. People started acting, not pretending, but becoming, taking on voices not their own, dancing in frenzied circles, chanting choruses that blurred the line between prayer and performance. The centerpiece, a dithyramb, a wild hymn-like chant performed by a chorus of up to 50 men, moved in rhythm, faces masked, eyes aflame with ecstasy. These weren't actors as we know them. They were vessels, mediums, each voice a drop in the divine pool of Dionysian energy. Then came a man named Thespis. Legend says he stepped out from the chorus around 530 for BCE and spoke as a character rather than as part of a group. Just like that, the concept of an actor was born. That's why we still call performers thespians today. Imagine it, one man alone on stage claiming to be someone else. It must have felt like blasphemy or magic. The Greeks were hooked. What began as sacred ritual started evolving into structured performance. Playwrights like Aeschylus and Sophocles would soon refine it further, adding a second and third actor, introducing dialogue, plot, and the idea of dramatic conflict. But the spiritual core never left. These early performances took place in massive open-air theaters carved into hillsides, most famously the Theater of Dionysus in Athens. It could hold up to 17,000 spectators, all gathered in a semicircle to witness something that straddled religion, art, and civic duty. So no, theater didn't start in silence. It arrived loud, masked, drenched in wine, and fueled by gods. The stage wasn't just a place to pretend. It was a portal to myth, madness, and meaning. And it all started with the need to celebrate something bigger than ourselves. Welcome to the stage. As Greek theater matured, it became more than divine devotion. It became a mirror through which Athenians could see their own fears, failures, and fleeting glories reflected under the